Behind is what we call a lake. A lake is like a larger body of water, and you'll see here water lilies and in the distance reeds. This was created it's an artificial lake, so this was dug out with a machine and lined with a plastic lining, but it's been here now quite a few years, so it's quite well established with plants. We have frogs, and in there a duck, and various waterfowl. So it's a great sort of little nature reserve. Behind is what we call a lake. A lake is like a larger body. We have an expression in English, to have no backbone, which means you have lack of purpose, or you're morally submissive. You could say that boy has no backbone. He gives in to the slightest problem. Anything you don't want or you don't need, we call this litter or rubbish. Litter or rubbish. And this is a litter bin or a rubbish bin. You can say both. These are trees behind me, and we have an expression in English, a family tree. This is a genealogical record of your family history in the form of a diagram, rather like the branches on a tree. You could say, I trace my family history back to the Tang dynasty. We have an expression, museum piece. This literally means something old which could be exhibited in a museum, but it can also be applied to something antiquated or worn out. For instance, if somebody arrived in a very old car and you didn't think it would make it, you could say, look, we can't go to Scotland in this museum piece. It'll never get there. This stone statue behind me is of a lion, the fearsome animal lion. We have an expression in English, lion heart. It means a person who is very brave, very determined. You could say, that old soldier, he is a lion heart. Now I am in the Chinese gallery in the British Museum, surrounded by these spectacular objects and wonderful pieces of art. Everything is divided up into historical order here, so you can go through various dynasties in the display cases. I mean, it must have some of the most amazing objects ever produced in China. They're just difficult to explain in words how wonderful they are. Down here, this is green grass. We have an expression in English, I can hear the grass grow, which means your hearing is so acute, so good, you can hear this grow. But actually you can't hear it grow. Down here you'll notice a temporary structure with metal poles and boards. This is what we call a scaffold. It's used to put up, while you're renovating a building. I think in China, what takes a week to do takes a couple of months here instead. You'll notice a temporary structure with metal poles and boards. Right now I'm in Russell Square, which is a sort of garden in central London. There are many gardens like this, we call them squares. And behind me you'll see this water display here. This is what we call a fountain. Right now I'm in Russell Square, which is a sort of garden in central London. There are many gardens like this. I'm standing outside my favourite restaurant in Chinatown, the restaurant. I often come here with my friends for delicious Sichuan spicy food. If you wish to entertain your friends or family with delicious food and drink, the has this private room for reservation. The food has arrived, and on the table here you see 3 bowls: spicy chicken hot pot, braised pig's trotters, and fortune soup. It all looks absolutely delicious. I'm with Yuki, the manageress of the restaurant. It's Saturday night, many people here, but I've managed to stop her for 5 minutes to say a few words. We have an expression in English, to make an exhibition of oneself. This means to invite public ridicule or contempt upon oneself. You could say, for instance, oh, that man, he's annoying the waiter. Why is he making an exhibition of himself? We have an expression in English, to make an exhibition of oneself. This means to invite public ridicule or contempt upon oneself. You could say, for instance, oh, that man, he's annoying the waiter. Why is he making an exhibition of himself? We have an expression in English. Behind me here are these stone columns, also known as pillars. We have an expression in England, a pillar of strength. This means something very strong. For instance, you could say, when I had my illness, my neighbour was a pillar of strength. They supported me right the way through it. Behind me here are these. We have an expression in English, to put someone out to grass. This means to retire someone compulsorily because of their age. It comes from the period when people put horses out to grass when they no longer were capable of working. We have an expression in English, to put someone out to grass. This means to retire someone compulsorily. Underneath all these trees and plants are roots which go in the ground. We have an expression, our roots, meaning our friendship, where we live, where we come from. That's our roots, or my roots are in London. Underneath all these trees and plants are roots which go in the ground. We have an expression, our roots, meaning our friendship, where we live, where we come from. That's our roots, or my roots are in London. Underneath, behind me, is what we call in England a cafe. They come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. A cafe serves hot food, simple food, coffee, soft drinks, that sort of thing. But it's not as elaborate as a restaurant where you'd go and have a much larger, elaborate meal. Tonight I'm going to make a video without subtitles. We're going to post it on all our platforms in China. We are asking our followers, what we'd like to know from you is what you want. What sort of videos do you want, what sort of content is interesting. It's very important to us, and then we can adapt our videos to suit. We very much rely on the feedback from our followers. It's vital for us to know this information. We have an expression in English, an open book. A book is what you read, and when you open it like that to read it. If you said that person is an open book, it means they're pretty obvious what they are, who they are. That's quite straightforward. There's no secrets about them. We have an expression in English. Look, they jump on the car. He might jump on. Look, he's going to jump on. Look, they jump on the car. We have an expression in English, to turf out. This means to get rid of somebody forcefully and eject them from the situation or property. You could say, the lodger was such a nuisance, we had to turf him out. That means you had to get rid of him from the property. We have.
Come.
Right.
Oh.
Come here. Can you get a?
Yeah, I got it. Oh no.
We have an expression in English, I'm up a gum tree. This means you're in great difficulty or can't make any further progress. I mean, your car might break down and you say, well, I'm up a gum tree. I just can't get anywhere. This car's stopped. It won't go. We have an expression. Yeah, I think they separate them from the male because some males might kill them.
Kill the baby.
Kill the babies, yeah.
As long as not, they won't kill their own baby.
They might. The male, if he mates with another female and she has small babies from another line, he'll kill them.
It's with mother.
Yeah, I think they separate them from the male because some males might kill them.
Kill the baby.
Kill the babies, yeah.
As long as not,
We have an expression in English about a person that they're a dry old stick. It means they're boring, uninteresting. You could say that man's a dry old stick. He's got nothing to say for himself. We have an expression in English. In the West, Chinese culture and objects are very, very popular. And at Longleat, for the Chinese Lantern Festival, they have these wonderful stylized Chinese dragons behind the gate, and behind that a fish dancing in the sea. In the West, Chinese culture. Behind me here is what we call a statue. This is normally takes the form of a person in stone or bronze. We call it a statue. Behind me here, we are still in Longleat Safari Park, which is part of Longleat Estate or Longleat House, the Marquis of Bath, and he has this enormous safari park with lots of different animals. And now we're passing the rhino, or what we call them rhinoceros. We are right in the centre of London, in what we call Trafalgar Square. Trafalgar Square is named after a very famous sea battle between the English Navy and the French Navy in a place called Trafalgar, where the English Navy defeated the French. And behind me here is Nelson's column, and on the top of the column is one of the most famous men in British history, Nelson, who led the English fleet. Right in the centre. Coming over. Yeah. Today I'm with Bebe Wang, and we're here with the flamencos, but I think very shortly we're in a lot of trouble because we're not supposed to be out of the car. And here comes the safari people to talk to us, I think. Okay, we better get back in. Thank you. Coming over. Behind me we have what we call a fountain. We have an expression in English, a fountain of knowledge. This means a person who's extremely knowledgeable about all sorts of things. So you could say that man is a fountain of knowledge. He knows so much about everything. Behind me we have what. Today I'm at Longleat Safari Park. This is a huge park with many different animals and species of animals. Right now we're looking at giraffes. These particular subspecies are the Rothschild giraffe from Kenya and Uganda. Apparently here at Longleat Safari Park they bred over 170 giraffes as a European program to protect the species. Today I'm at Longleat Safari Park. I believe in Chinese you have an expression "wo tai nan le," meaning I'm exhausted, I'm extremely tired. In English we have a word which is slightly unofficial, but it's called knackered. You could say I'm knackered, which means I'm extremely tired or exhausted. I believe in Chinese you have an expression "wo tai nan le," meaning I'm exhausted, I'm extremely. I believe in Chinese you have an expression "wo tai." I believe in Chinese you have an expression "wo tai nan le," meaning every year we have a celebration, a religious celebration called Christmas Day, and everybody erects a Christmas tree. This is a very modern, contemporary Christmas tree, but normally my family in my house I would put a real tree, a fir tree, and decorate it with lights and objects. Every year we have a celebration.